In May, another curveball. Pistorius' mental health was in the spotlight, and it was suggested that he go for a full psychiatric evaluation at Vescopi's hospital. At that point, what brought us to this point in the case, actually?
What had happened was the defense had called their own psychiatric expert who testified that Oscar Pistorius had a generalized anxiety disorder. So they'd called this expert, and Gerrie Nel had countered by saying, but surely, are you trying to argue diminished capacity, and preempted an argument by the defense that possibly Oscar Pistorius could not be held fully accountable for his actions. The state then applied for Oscar Pistorius to be referred for psychiatric evaluation. He opposed, his legal team opposed that application, but the judge granted it, and he was sent to the Vescopi psychiatric facility for 30 days.
When we talk about Oscar's mental health, this came up a lot when he was testifying. Judge Thokozile Masipa couldn't always stopping, are you all right to continue? We saw him really get emotional as a witness. Did that add to his credibility, Annika?
I think it did in some ways. I think it also might have been bad for his credibility in some instances, because a lot of people felt that it was perhaps not sincere. I know that I think June Steenkamp said she felt that it wasn't necessarily something that stirred her emotionally. But I think for general court watchers, it showed at least a sense of genuine remorse for what had happened.
All right, the defense wrapped their case and court adjourned on the 8th of August. When we come back, we move to September, and that's Judgment Day. Welcome back. We're looking at the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, the biggest news story of the year in South Africa. After months of dramatic testimony, courtroom tears and breakdowns, Judge Thokozile Masipa finally delivered her verdict in September.
The unanimous decision of this court is the following: not guilty. Instead, he is found guilty of culpable homicide.
What was the reaction when that verdict was handed down? Let me begin with you, Karen.
Well, what had happened the preceding day was that the judge had really gone through, the various options. She'd said she couldn't find him guilty on premeditated murder. She'd accepted the defense's timeline of events. And the big question was really, would she find him guilty of murder under the principle of dolus eventualis? And I think everyone, including his legal team, had steeled themselves for that particular verdict. And then she said, on the basis of the evidence before me, I cannot make that finding. I believe he intended to shoot, but I don't believe he intended to kill.
Did this take the legal fraternity by surprise, Annika?
I think it did, because intention for so many lawyers is about, whether he intended to shoot or did he intend to kill. And when you fire 4 black Talon bullets into a locked cubicle that probably has no light, how could you not foresee the possibility that you could have ended up killing somebody?
What about the public's reaction to this, Phakamile? I mean, there were hundreds of people outside the day that the verdict rather was handed down. What were people in the streets saying?
Everybody was shocked. Everybody was expecting something else. And I think that was the one thing that South Africa actually never really recovered from. And I think that was where some of the anger and the disappointments and even some of the vitriol against Oscar actually came up.
And Judge Masipa. I think that was completely misplaced, because I think the biggest issue with this case was that what people were promised was going to come out actually didn't. The promise of some, painting or proving of a rage crime, of an intimate femicide, of a relationship that had gone horribly and violently wrong, where a man had hunted down a woman in a bathroom, there was not the evidence to substantiate that.
But Oscar didn't help himself either, I think. And I think that was the biggest thing that a lot of people had difficulty accepting. Having watched his testimony, having watched him fall apart in a cross-examination, the different versions that he came up with, people were just astounded that Judge Masipa would actually believe anything that he would say, because by that stage, as far as a lot of people were concerned, they'd sort of written him off as a liar.
But Ferrinal won the war of hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Because he managed up to a certain point to make many people believe that here was this wealthy, spoilt,
Rich,
arrogant boy, almost, who was not taking responsibility for his actions.
And
that resonated despite the narrative, as you say, not being there.
This is the thing, right? He may not be a nice guy, but that's not the same as being a murderer. And I think that's where Harry Nell went wrong.
And I think just judging by the reaction, you know, even the different opinions that the three of you have around his testimony, you know, just shows how polarized South Africans were. The day before the sentence, eNCA spoke exclusively to Pistorius' siblings, Carl and Ame.
How do you, as his brother and sister, try and help him cope with what has happened? I mean, the enormity of his situation and where he is now.
No, I don't think that as a family we take every situation as it comes and we support each other wholeheartedly, and but it's a difficult thing, because you, as much as you can feel someone else's pain, you'll never fully understand it, and there's nothing that you can do to take it away. And it's something that my brother will live with forever.
It's difficult to own someone's pain, nearly impossible. At best, as siblings, we can empathize, knowing who Oscar is at his core. Having grown up together, his character, the kind of person that he is, it's difficult to see prosecution attack that very essence of the person that you love.
Why has it been so important for your family, and we've seen it on an ongoing basis, to reach out to the Steenkamps? I mean, we saw in the final days of the trial, particularly that embrace, that attempt to connect with this family and to show them love. Why is that important for you to do in the kind of atmosphere that we find ourselves in?
It's an impossible situation, and you know, we could never understand or even attempt to comprehend what they're going through, but it's important for us that they know that she was very much cared for and loved and accepted as part of our family in the short time that she was with us. And if you knew Reva, you know, you didn't need to know her for very long for it to just creep into your heart, and really just, she had a wonderful charisma and zest for life that she just exuded, and it was easy to just fall in love with her.
Karen, that interview which you did with Pistorius' brother and sister, you know, it went international once it was actually aired. How important was it for you to establish a level of trust with the family? How did you actually manage to get that interview?
Right in the beginning of this case, there was such an overflow of blatantly incorrect reporting that I think the stance that we as a station took about just reporting facts, not reporting on that kind of thing in reaction, just staying with what we knew to be absolutely true and trying to keep a balance between what was being said by the state and the police versus what the defense was saying, I think that was what they responded to. And I think they felt that they would have an opportunity to speak, that there wasn't any particular agenda in any particular direction, and that they would have an opportunity to say what they wanted to say. And I think they did.
Did any of you find it hard to remain impartial in this case?
For me personally, when I was reporting on this trial, I always tried to focus on what happened in court. What happened in court for that day? What did the defense say? What did the prosecution say? And what does it mean? And I think if you focus on those issues, then you will always ensure that you're delivering precisely the objective news, which is what we are trained to do as journalists.
Having spent a lot of time in courtrooms following trials, I almost shut down in a sense, and I just don't have the ability often to choose a side.
We also discussed, I mean, you will know that as well because you were outside with us. We had heated debates. We'd say this, and this. And what is this interpretation of the evidence? And our colleague, Diane Hawker, who is an excellent legal journalist who works online, would also be this kind of quiet voice of calm. Remember, Pakamila and I used to have these heated debates, and Diane would sort of say, well, you know, what about this and what about that? I think the thing is I agree with Pakamila. You will never be objective, and that's a standard that actually doesn't exist. But you can be fair, and you can be balanced, and you can try to listen to all sides. And I think that's all we try to do throughout this.
All right, well, let's take a look at sentencing now. The news that the court found Pistorius was not a murderer brought great relief for his family, but he was not to escape a prison sentence. After finding Pistorius guilty of culpable homicide and the reckless handling of a firearm, Judge Thokozile Masipa sentenced him to 5 years behind bars.